And
it'll
he was
kill
like,
you years early.
Years early.
If you continue and you don't bring it down for a significant period of time, your life will be shorter. Wow, look at me. I'm so likable. I'm so friendly. Hi, how are you? The second I feel that uncomfortable gnawing feeling of life is getting too ordinary, I'm not a new novelty anymore.
Oop.
Flight, next city, new job.
And I'm ovulating
Freeze.
and I'm like overtime. That just made me tear up. So they go, did you get shorter? Did you shrink? And I was like, yeah, it's the side effect of that Ozempic that you're taking.
Life speaks to you in whispers.
Yeah.
Before it talks to you, before it screams at you.
I joke about it, but it's so true. My life has been defined by gay men coming out to me, straight men coming in. But it's like, I know you're carrying a heavy depression over those choices. And I was like, I'm
not. Size though, because this would definitely give me a yeast infection.
I hate going to the gym and I can't stand being set up.
It feels like I just had a one-night stand and I'm like, where's his bed sheet? Oh, God.
today I'm like, yeah.
You're perfect to me.
Thank you.
What I've learned has been working for me, and I've done a lot of, not to throw buzzword out there, like modalities, to kind of get better in my mental health.
Yeah.
But one of them has been, the thing that has worked most immediately has been being aware of my nervous system.
Oh, yeah.
But like very aware and not activating it. Because I realized what was at was step one to all of the bad things was me activating my nervous system. So people pleasing, which is one of my problems. What happens before you people please? You activate, you turn the smile on, right? And before you take on too much work, what are you doing? You're going, okay, well, my normal, baseline nervous system is not going to be able to handle this. So what do I have to do? I have to activate into survive mode. Activate. At literally step one of all of the things that I'm trying to correct start at this one place, activation of the nervous system. And so I go, okay, once I realized that after 5 years of like incredible, intense inner work, I said, all right, let me try this. Some new attempt at me, trying to figure something out here. It has worked immediately.
Wow.
Immediately. Because if I can feel it. I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Some person walks down the hallway and I want to make, wow, look at me. I'm so likable. I'm so friendly. Hi, how are you? No. And instead, you know exactly what I'm saying. And so instead, but you have to, the core, but at the core of it is going, the core of that need to activate is unless I change, I am not enough. Unless I change, I'm not good enough. Unless I change, I'm not worthy. Unless I change, I'm not all of those things. Because we have to put the mask on in order to be palatable. And so I arrived at understanding that before I got to this nervous system thing. So now I intellectually get that. And I'm actually starting to emotionally get that too. So you got it, because that's the fight that you're fighting there. The fight to not turn it on is the fight to say, I don't have to change to be in this room with you right now. I can be ordinary. I can be not likable. Actually, you could totally not like me, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. I never knew. Never knew that was even a possibility. An option. Yes, Brittany, an option. Wow.
Yeah.
And this goes to every creative out, almost every creative out. Actually, no. I kind of take that back because I've interviewed a lot of celebrities, and actually a lot of them are very comfortable just being in their own, their own world,
whatever
whether you like it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. First off, thank you for sharing that for not only the listeners, but me on a personal level, because it's something I've grappled with. And you're truly unlearning years of a nervous system, and it's not overnight, and it's a knee jerk. It is fight or flight.
It's knee jerk, fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Yeah.
Ooh, fawn for me is it's flight. I've traveled. I've lived in so many different cities. The second I feel that uncomfortable gnawing feeling of life is getting too ordinary, I'm not a new novelty anymore.
Oop.
Flight. next city, new job.
Major change.
Major change.
I haven't announced anything in a while. People must think that I'm falling off.
Right.
Oh, I need to go do something. I need a new job. I need a new podcast. Yeah.
That for me falls in flight. It's not the literal definition of it, but for me, that's how I interpret flight in my life.
Oh, totally.
Fawn, people pleasing.
Yeah.
Freeze. Oh, this is interesting. I did not realize that when I moved back, because I'm originally from Miami. I grew up here, and then I lived
Where else have you lived, by the way?
So I grew up here. I went to college in Boston. My first job was in Tucson. My second job was in Chicago. Third job in New York. Fourth job, actually, 2 jobs in New York, then Tampa, and then here. And then I studied abroad in the Netherlands. Okay, I kind of forget. I'm like, I technically lived in the Netherlands at one point.
I love this. I had no idea about this. This is awesome.
Yeah. So, but when I moved back, I did not know that there was an entire era of mental health cleanup work that was waiting for me back in my hometown, because Miami's fabulous. We love Miami, but it is my hometown.
Yeah.
And as a little gay kid, all of the origin story of my insecurities and my feelings of lack of worth and all of that all started here. Yeah. And there's something so powerful about geography.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's just being in a physical space can just make you. So when I came back, it took maybe almost a year.
Yeah.
And I just started to feel this fall off. I didn't know what it was. I was acting a little funny, acting out a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of not making sense anymore, being a little weird. And then boom, fell off into years and years and years of depression and all of this stuff. And for me, that was freeze. That I'm getting back to that.
Yeah.
It was freeze.
Yeah.
I froze here in Miami. I did my job very all of that.
Sure, but on a growth level, you felt like you kept running into dead ends.
Yeah, I didn't know where to go.
You didn't know where to go.
I became emotionally the little kid that I ran from Miami to escape. I became him again at 30-something years old.
And I'm ovulating, and I'm like overtime. That just made me tear up.
Yeah. Have you? Thank you. Do you ever feel anything?
I do. That? That's so interesting that you say that. So I have so many things to say. So I grew up in Miami as well. Geography plays a huge part.
It does.
Of everything.
Yeah.
I also think part of our intuitive tendency to, oh my God, connect, vibe is Miami. Because it's such a showy place. It's such a high energy place, fast paced place. It's very vain. It's very aesthetic forward. So I think you are judged in Miami by the vibe you bring to the occasion or the vibe you bring to the interaction. So I think being raised here also put that into our systems as well too. I was born in New Jersey, and all my family's in Jersey and in New York, and I missed them terribly growing up, and I did not want to be an only child. So for me, growing up in Miami, I always had one foot in New York, if only for like, Mom, Dad, why can't we go back to where my cousins are? Why can't we go back to where grandma is? Why can't we go back? And I also always had like an obsession with New York City. So I always wanted to be there as well too. Yeah. And
New York is so fun. It's so exhausting, but it's so fun.
It's so fun. And I still feel like it's more of my personality. And I think what I do like about New York is I can walk around New York and have that freedom to just be like, good morning. Yeah. How are you? Fine.
Yeah.
How are you?
You're anonymous in New York. I mean, there's just so many people. Nobody
gives a shit.
Right. Even if you're important, like nobody cares.
You see celebrities and paparazzi walking out of their apartment building like, whatever. And nobody cares. It's if they would have had that same, didn't like Giselle Bundchen get caught in like a paparazzi photo walking out of her mansion in Miami, upset, and like Miami tabloids made a huge deal about it, and it was like, oh God, in New York they would be like, get in line, you know what I mean? So, it's interesting that you felt, well, especially as like a young gay kid in Miami, which is not always the most queer supportive, gay supportive space. I just felt out of body in Miami my entire time growing up here. Yeah. I wanted to be in New York. I missed my family. I didn't identify with Miami energetically. I'm not Hispanic. So I think if you're not Hispanic or Jewish, I would say, you can have a little bit of an outskirts experience in Miami. I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't develop the way the girls down here did. I don't look Miami. So I always felt out of body. And I think for me, that tendency to show up and overcompensate also comes from being an only child.
Yeah.
I was the golden child. My mom took forever to get pregnant. She got pregnant late in life. They finally had me. Oh my God, girl. Like, and I think
she had one legend and she was done.
And she was done. I joke with her. I was like, why would you need to have any others? Because you had me and it's not going to get better. And she's like, sit the fuck down. Yeah. So for me, that's where that comes from, that tendency to
You know what's interesting is
people. Yeah.
You and I are so similar in so many ways. And
Yeah.
I've always been into the Myers-Briggs thing. We've talked about that, which is that personality type, the 4 letters, yada, yada. I'm ENFP. I think if you're not me, you're very close.
You're ENFP?
ENFP.
ENFP,
Yeah.
okay.
Extroverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving. I mean, if you Google ENFP, everything that's ever been written about an ENFP is
I'm
me.
Googling it right now, but yes, continue.
Yeah, that's me. But then I also got into Enneagram. Do you know Enneagram?
I do, and I forgot what I am. Am I a 5? I think I'm a 5.
I'm a 4-wing 5. See, we're so close.
Okay, we're so close.
We're so close.
I want to say I'm a 5. Yes.
And so Myers-Briggs, for people who don't know, is sort of about what you are. Enneagram is about why you are.
Yeah, Enneagram is more informative.
It gets down to the
like
root.
the molecular level of why
Yes.
you react that way and speak that way and everything. Yes.
And
yeah.
what for me was fascinating about Enneagram was that it had filled me in on the fact that my identity, and I wonder if you're similar in this respect, probably, that my identity is other. And so as a kid, I immediately felt othered. And so from that point forward, I always feel like I'm not a part of the room. I'm like the other person.
I always felt that way growing up.
And so but now after reading that, I'm like, oh, this explains a lot. It also is the reason why I'm good at my job, because you're able to look at scenario. You can judge them. You can report on them because you're outside of it.
You
so
literally,
you can see
objectivity as a reporter is your strongest skill set. Yeah.
Right.
And also you work on Deco Drive, an entertainment show that what I think Deco has always done really well at standing out from the other news programs is it is very national. It is very broad. It's about entertainment. It's about pop culture. It obviously has a Miami energy and a Miami flair and Miami angles, but it's always done a really good job at covering beyond the parameters of South Florida.
Yeah.
And I think your ability to identify as other also allows you to be a chameleon to anybody who walks in the room or whatever it is you're covering. I just had my agent just gave me that compliment and I meant the he goes, yeah, like, another agent at my agency was like, oh, she's a chameleon. She could kill anywhere in the country. And I was like, thank you. That's very sweet. It's also very exhausting because you're constantly matching energies.
Always.
And then you can feel like you're not at home in your own body that way because you're spending time in everybody else's.
So have you gotten to the point where you're conscious that you and your body are sort of separate a lot of the time? Because I have.
Yeah.
I've realized, oh, wow, hold on. And this actually connects back to the nervous system thing. The more that I don't activate my nervous system, the more I feel in my body. The more I activate it, the more me and my body are separate.
That's profound.
Oh yeah. It's and the more often you don't activate, and if you continue that for a long period of time, you really start to feel in touch with yourself.
Yeah, you start to sit into your own body.
Yes. And I can feel myself when I'm so out of it.
I
just
can too.
A robot.
I can too, and it's actually scary. And I think working in media and entertainment, you just get really good because you have to. Again, it's a good skill set. It's actually necessary for what we do. You do get really good at turning on. If you have a snafu on air, you know what to do. If something happens live on stage, you've got it. But you can feel absent in your own. And it takes years to. Then I want to get into like tactical things that you've done that have helped you kind of like nurture your nervous system. But I just got a compliment from 2 close friends, one who lives here in South Florida. She's a comedian, photographer. She's great. And she's also been through her fair share of trauma. She's incredibly intuitive, a caretaker, a healer. She's a wonderful human being. And another person who's also a wonderful human being and lives out in LA. And I don't even spend a lot of time with her, but she's one of those friends that I feel like I've known my entire life. And I consider it a really big personal win this year that both of them don't know each other and at separate occasions said, you feel so at home in your body, like more than you ever have before.
Oh,
yeah. And I was like, I do. And they're like, yeah, like that nervous energy, like you're always an energetic person. You're extroverted, you're all these things. But Abby had said, she was like, you don't feel like a rescue dog. And she goes, I mean that in the most like loving way, but you don't have this energy. Like you feel like somebody's going to hurt you and you need to be on. And then my friend Lauren in LA just said, you just feel like you're in your own skin way more than you ever were when you visited before. And I was like, yeah, I am. And it's nice. And I've arrived and it's, and to your point about the nervous system is incredibly obviously impactful on the body to where like my doctor had even said, where I was like, why is my neck swelling? And
it'll
he was
kill
like,
you years early. If you continue it, you don't bring it down for significant periods of time, you will your life will be shorter.
Your
heart
be
is
shorter
beating at a faster pace. That's how it goes.
It's literally, there's only so long. If you're living in freeze, fight, flight forever, you're literally shaving years off your life. And I had just said to him, I was like, why is my neck swelling like this? Like, I literally thought it was lymphatic cancer. I was like, what's going on? And he was like, well, there's nothing really here. So he's like, I really think your body is
so tense
and attacking itself.
Yes.
From everything you do. And I was like, oh, yeah.
At the pits of my depression.
Yeah.
Pit? Am I right? Pits of my right?
Yeah, I'm
Either
with
way.
it. Yeah.
Depression
is the pits. It fucking sucks.
I started developing chronic pain. I never understood. I've always heard that people suffer from chronic pain, and obviously it's not something I had ever experienced before. So
like joint pain.
I understood it in like an intellectual.
Yeah.
But my body, it just started to hurt in different areas, like just all over the place. Just started to hurt, and I said, "What is this? What is going on?" Because when you're in depression for a long period of time, there are just so many weird things that are happening all the time. And it's like, what now?
It blends together.
Yes.
The days, the time, your feelings, your body. Yes, it all becomes very blurred. That's part of depression. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I realized that it was because my body was so tense all the time that your muscles, when they're like this and they don't get a break, they're gonna start to hurt.
Yeah.
Your body is, like you said, it's almost like attacking itself.
Yeah.
Because you just can't relax.
Yeah.
And when you relax is when you're in your body, yada, yada, yada.
Do you struggle relaxing? I do. When I get a day off, sometimes I'm like, just sit still at the pool, Brittany.
You know what? I
get
I can actually very easily relax when I'm not in an environment that triggers me back into my fight, flight, freeze, fun,
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
And so
I will say this. The good thing about exhausting your body to the point of chronic pain, because there is a good thing, is I think getting it to that point, for better or for worse, probably for worse and probably for long-term health impacts, that is what allowed me to finally listen to my nervous system because I had no other choice but to do so.
Oh, yeah.
When I got to the point where my voice is falling apart, I'm in chronic pain, I am that exhausted, I am that spent, that's finally when I have to listen to my nervous system and go, this is all I can give you right now.
Your body is life.
No, I don't.
I love to say,
I don't want
life
to talk
speaks
anymore.
to you in whispers.
Yeah.
Before it talks to you, before it screams at you. Yeah. And so if you continue ignoring the signals that no doubt your body had already given you 15 years ago, then it will get to a point that is so extreme that it's saying, I'm going to get you in a place where you have no other choice but to finally deal with whatever is not working at the bottom of your, the way that you live your life.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of it. For me, it was, and I said, if I never moved back to Miami, I wouldn't have had this like huge chunk of my life that was just so sort of dark and all of that.
You feel like you reclaimed Miami and reclaimed yourself by moving back? Me too.
And it was the greatest gift ever because this was waiting for me the whole time.
Yeah.
If I had moved to San Francisco and lived in the Castro district for the rest of my life and was just super gay and happy and all this, that would have been awesome. But I still would have had this
unresolved chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I still would have been running from it.
Yeah.
Because until we tackle it, we're always running from it. Anything that we feel, we can feel it. It's that uncomfortable feeling is there. And you go, oh. And so you're not free. You're not free.
You're not free.
You're not free.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. Like, I mean, career-wise, moving back to Miami, the pandemic was monumental for me, but it was also as a young girl who grew up feeling out of place in Miami and not liking it and feeling out of her body, feeling like she didn't fit in. I don't even think I've ever said this out loud to anybody or in therapy, let alone on this podcast, but I remember as a young girl, like maybe middle school, maybe late elementary, feeling so, growing up in West Kendall, feeling so out of place, not being Hispanic, not originally being from here. Pair that with being an awkward, smaller girl in class who has glasses and terrible bangs that her mom gave her and no boobies like the other girls and a million other things. I had pretended to be Hispanic to my classmates. And maybe there's a memory of somebody bullying me because I wasn't, or picking on me because I wasn't or something, but I had defended, and I think that was my way of so badly trying to fit in with my classmates and fit in Miami. And I ran from Miami. I said, the second I graduated high school, I went to college at University of Florida. Second I graduated there, I went to New York. Yeah. I was devastated to leave and come back, but I had to come back. And I had to come back to learn I'm okay as I am. Yes. I'm exactly fine as I am, and look at the acceptance and love that I could find. And it was really, the move back to Miami was personal and emotional and attached to my identity. I was like, wow, I fit in Miami. I'm not an outsider down here. There is a place, and I'm sure as a gay man, you're like, oh, there is a place for me here. You know what I mean? Like maybe you felt growing up that there wasn't, and now as an adult man, you're like, no, there are communities, there are people who see me and love me and accept me for what I am, and I feel that way now too.
And the most important thing is to feel like you're accepted within yourself. Like that's the only thing at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. And once you learn how to accept yourself, you fit in anywhere, anywhere. So you could live in, Arkansas, you can live in Florida, you can live in California. As long as you're good in you, you're fine anywhere.
I saw
and
a
that
quote.
Is freedom. And for me, that's I'm not fully there yet, but like that's been my journey since I've come back here. And it's the most beautiful thing. I mean, it really is. I think this chapter, which has been like the craziest chapter of my life, I'm like, wow, this is going to be the most important. This is the launch pad for the second half of my life. Yeah. Which will be meant to actually just be lived and to not run, but to just live.
Yeah, you would mention that off camera. I mean, you've accomplished so much. You've been at Deco for 15 years?
No, I've been at Deco now for
That's a long time.
5.
Wait, 5. I was
years.
like, 15 doesn't make... No,
15. I've been working in TV for 15 years.
You've been working in TV for 15 years. Got it. Right,
working in TV for 15 years. But, I mean, I was the morning announcements guy in middle school.
I'm sure you were.
And in high school.
Class president, but the thespian on the dance team. It all makes sense. Yeah.
All the stuff, thespian too. And so I always joke that like the kids that I went to school with, they have not, in Miami, they have not been able to escape.
They're like, there he is again. Yeah.
They had to watch me on the morning announcements at that age, and then again in high school, and then now again as adults.
Oh, I've had people that I went to high school with go, did I just see you on a billboard for a radio station? Why are you on an Arts Center pamphlet or whatever? And I'm like, you're welcome.
Arts Center. Brittany.
So, that's oh my
amazing.
God. I'm
Congratulations.
excited. Thank you. I'm excited. Yeah, but sorry.
And with all the good with all the bad comes all the good. That's the great thing.
Always.
Like, you realize that anything that is a difficulty in life is equally and oppositely something that's fantastic
and beautiful.
And beautiful.
Yeah. Also, something you mentioned about like who you were in high school. I think too, high school can be such a traumatizing thing. I actually have a fan who's become a friend of mine too, who has showed this podcast to her daughter, because I guess along the way I talked about accepting my body and finally really genuinely liking it. And even now with my weight gain, which is new for me, and on the one hand I embrace it because I'm like, cool, like I got made fun of my entire life for not having boobs or being too thin or flaca, as I got called in Miami, or small or whatever. And I'm like,
I think I have to officially say I don't see it, but I know that that's real for you.
I appreciate that.
On the record, I just have to feel like I have to throw that in there, but I know because I can see it with myself when I'm watching stuff back and I'm like, I have to edit my stories around like how I look, and I'm like, it's all in my head. But
it is. It's all, we're our own worst enemies, but also on the objective side of that. Nobody knows your body more than you. So
course.
obviously you're going to notice these things. And I just spoke with a friend in LA about this, and she was just like, she's had kids too. So she was like, oh my God, do you know what it's like after pregnancy to look at yourself in the mirror and you're swollen and you're this, and on top of that, you're depressed and you've got kids. And she was like, just, your body has seasons just like you do.
Right.
Just like a sports team does, just like a TV show does. And just let that season, she's like, that's where my body is. And this is how we're gaining or losing weight right now. And she goes, I can guarantee your weight loss or health journey is going to be a hell of a lot easier if you just love your body through it.
Yeah. Which is
Easier
really
said
loving
than
yourself.
done.
And then your body is just this thing that is allowing you to live a life.
Yeah.
And to walk around and to grab things and to experience all the fun things. And,
Yeah.
And so that's another thing too that I've also struggled with. I've always felt so scrawny my whole life.
Me too.
For a guy, I'm short. And so I'm,
We are the same person.
we
I
are
think.
so the same person. It's like so crazy.
Somebody last
we have
night
the
goes,
same coffee order. Like it's, yeah.
Somebody last night goes, did you get shorter? and I don't even know if they're happy with their weight or not. They're a normal body or whatever. And I just got so annoyed. They were like, oh, I think you got shorter. And I was like a 33-year-old woman who has her shit together and is a badass. I was like, God, I'm so sick of like dealing with this. So they go, did you get shorter? Did you shrink? And I was like, yeah, it's the side effect of that Ozempic that you're taking. And then they looked at me and they were like, touche. I like walked away.
It's funny because I've heard you multiple times say that you don't like when people like reference, your height. And for me, I think we've had the same insecurity about the same thing. And I take it the other way. I constantly make fun of my height on the show. Like I'll use it as just like a little, kind of an added little joke here and there. And we've processed it in two different ways.
It's like, the thing is, I don't see myself as the height that I am. I truly am like a chihuahua. Like, because those are always the smallest, scrawniest dogs, but they have the balls to get in front of a bulldog and be like, you and I are the same. Like that's how I view myself. I can make fun of it. I think it's when people key on it. I can almost like, if somebody teases me about it, I'm okay with it. But it's when people are like, oh my God, you like really are just like so tiny. I'm like, you've never seen somebody who's 4'11".
Yeah.
That's when it gets like, you know what I mean?
Like, okay,
I'm like, okay, whatever. But
it's like, I've never heard that before. Yeah.
I've never heard that before. But to go back to, I think so many people, a fan told me she had showed the podcast to her daughter who's in high school, I believe, and grappling with body image and kids are mean and not making friends and that she was like, I'm so glad she heard this episode about you just being like, fuck them.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And it's easier said than done, but the quicker you can learn that, and if you can master that in high school, it's a hell of a lot easier in your adult years. But to that point, I think we run from who we were in high school so much because that can be such a traumatizing time.
Yes.
But like you did the morning announcements, that was always in such a formative time as well too.
Yeah.
Like that's who you
just
were.
You just reminded me of something that, people always ask like, what regrets do you have? Like, what's your regret in life?
Yeah.
And I never know like how to answer that question because of course we regret a lot of things, but then, Madonna's answer about no regrets is so compelling too. So you're like, should I be thinking that? I don't know.
I know. That's bullshit. I had my boomer mom on and I was like, what regrets do you have? And I was like, I know you're going to be like, nothing. I don't regret anything. And I was like, answer it. There's got to be something that you wish you would have done sooner or different. It doesn't mean you're wallowing in regret.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that without a doubt, I do, it fits for that question. In life, I wish I would have told more people more often and far earlier to, and I'm a TV reporter, so I can't say certain words, to F off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you could say them on my show, but yes.
The older, right, on your show, I can't.
Yeah.
I look back and I go, I'm literally thinking about one specific person right now, but there are many that, my God, if I had just immediately after
you only have one? I have a okay.
Yeah, after the immediate disrespect, ending it right there and just saying, F you, and walking away, getting him out of my life. But when you struggle with needing to be liked, needing to be accepted, you can't because you don't want to be rejected by that person. You still want to have their approval, even if they're horrible to you, psychologically in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's the one regret that I have in life. Just not being like, and that's it.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more it's like
It's
wonderful.
a lot easier. And also
it's like, bye. Like, no, I don't mess with you. I don't,
Yeah, I could say it. I also think you can say fuck off in your actions.
Yes.
Not just your words.
Right.
As well too. Though I am a big believer, and maybe it's the stand-up comic in me or something, that like I'm like, some people need to be told.
Yeah.
F you to their face, or need to be,
Some people rely on people being afraid to just call a spade a spade. And I'm thinking of another person now that like kind of is those Regina Georges of life that poke you in just the right way, where if you respond back, it almost feels like you're you're overreacting, but they're doing it on purpose to kind of gaslight you.
To get a rise out of you.
To get a rise out of you. But you don't feel like it's your, those people, tell them F you, immediately move on.
100%.
And in life, the older you get, it's so true. And there's that stereotype of like old people who they kind of give up. They just call it as it is and move on.
Yeah.
That's the direction that I would like to move in.
I did it with somebody down here who, when you said Regina George is, I mean, I've had a couple across my career and life and so on and so forth. And particularly between women, it can get very tense. You know what I mean? It's like men, I'm used to straight men. I'm used to dealing with misogyny and sexism and all of that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Honestly, at this point, if you're sexist and misogynist, honestly, if you're homophobic at this point, I'm like, how embarrassing for you to be living in this world.
It's so embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing.
I'm embarrassed for you.
I did a show in Kendall a couple weeks ago, and it was like a small little farewell thing, because I am spending more time in New York and I'm on the road. I'm trying to move back to New York and whatever. Anyways, and it's Kendall, it's West Kendall, so it's largely Cuban and Hispanic, and it does lean very Trump and Republican, and it just is. You can see the signs in the neighborhoods. And I have a bit about the Don't Say Gay bill that obviously I hate, right? And I just started the bit, and this old Cuban man shoots up, drunk out of his mind, so angry, so viscerally like upset. And he was like, "You stupid bitch, you do your research. Gays are ruining the country. They're ruining our children. It's that." And it was so absurd. It's I know it's like they're eating the pets in Springfield, Ohio level of like insane. And it was, so first off, for me, I just can't have those conversations anymore. I feel this way about abortion, as you see on my shirt. Like, whenever people are like, "You're beheading babies and you're evil," and I'm like, okay, those conversations we can't have anymore. I will have a healthy discourse with someone, but I just watched him embarrass himself, this man. And the whole room was like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe he really thinks this way. And he was belligerent and very visceral, very hurt, very offended, very angry, very wrong about the whole thing. And truly, my first thought was, it's 2024 and you really still think that?
Well,
that's crazy.
I think before I would be so, it's interesting being a gay person. And of course, none of my comments are related to any specific politicians and any specific policy and all of that, because of course, all that.
Totally.
Okay, so,
yeah.
But being a gay person is very interesting in this world. It's a really unique sort of standpoint. You sort of sit in between the middle of straight men and straight women. You have like you understand this group, you understand that group, because you're a little bit of both in a way.
Yeah.
And in a way. And
I totally see what you're saying.
And there's this constant projection on you're just living your life. You are just a person like anybody else. And you're just living your life. You're paying your taxes. You're going to work. You're going to the Cheesecake Factory. You're coming home. You're watching Netflix. But then you turn on the TV, you turn on social media, and you are the villain of the world. I mean, it's so odd. And of course, as a little kid, that did so much psychological damage, seeing people in big platforms on TV spewing all of this just nonsense about you. And of course, yourself, and that none of this makes sense. The math doesn't math.
The math doesn't
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so the older that I've gotten, I have overcome all of that. And I've gotten to the place that you just said, which is, my thing now is, I'm embarrassed for you. Please go to therapy.
Yeah.
But also, I don't care if you go to therapy either, because you are not my concern anymore.
No.
Before you were my concern.
Yeah.
Because I was so scared of you and what you would do to me.
Yeah.
You know, whether legally or just the societal humiliation.
Physical harm.
Physical harm.
I've had death threats from my comedy.
Yeah.
You dumb slut, go get another abortion. I was like, what is happening?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Crazy.
I've overcome that too. And that's a great place as an LGBTQ person, especially in 2024. That's a great place to be at, because you realize, number one, you can't really do much about it. All you can do is just live your life as a good citizen and all of that. And
do you know what
and let people have their, because here's the thing. Whenever somebody is accusing me or my community of the most vile things, I go, why are you thinking about this so much?
Yeah.
It feels like a projection.
Oh, well, the
Because
way
guess
this
what?
man shut up, I
Yeah.
said, I go,
Guess what I'm not thinking about?
You.
And I think we know, well,
Yeah.
you or the things that you're accusing my community
me
of.
up.
Not once in my day am I thinking about any of that stuff. Let's
God.
just,
I'm so fired up.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to talk about it. And so
Yeah.
not once, but why are you thinking about it so much? And so it's like, dude,
yeah.
go tackle your demons.
Yeah.
You know, go to a therapist.
Yeah.
But you clearly don't want to do that.
Yeah.
What you want to do is take whatever's going on in here and you want to put it on me. It's very easy. Like, the LGBT community is such an easy group because, you know, we are a minority and we're everywhere. We're in every group. We're white, we're black, we're Hispanic, we're Democrat, we're Republican. We're all over the place. And so we're sort of this kind of easy group because you can't really nail us down.
Yeah.
So you can accuse us of everything.
Yeah.
And kind of not really feel any blowback on it. Like,
Yeah.
And so I'm done with that. I'm done with that.
Good for you. You know what it feels
Yeah.
like? The metaphor in my head is it feels like elevating so high, like once your self-acceptance is there and you know what you believe to be true and you know who you are, you know what's absurd, you know what's extreme, you know what you're proud of, all these things. It's almost like watching a homophobic child, try to reach you on the top shelf.
A child.
And they can't. And they
Emotionally a child.
Emotionally a child. And
Intellectually often a child.
that too.
Because the thing is, again, the math doesn't math. The number one thing that our community has always, and it's been very clever by people who, you know, are looking to obtain power, have always accused our community of, if you go to the statistics,
Yeah.
and if you look up who is responsible for these heinous crimes that are constantly being projected on our community, you'd find that it's not our community. You'd find that the number one group of people who are a threat to women are straight men.
white males.
You'd know that the number one group of people who are responsible for heinous crimes, and the other ones that we're talking about, are straight men. So it's just like, you're not actually looking to solve the problem. You're just looking to move the problem away.
And
if you look in culture and you see I live on this planet, there is a constant projection of young women with older men. It's so normalized. And there are popular songs, number one songs of the year that they were released in, about older men fantasizing about young women.
Yeah.
And yet,
Yeah.
I don't know any gay anything that has anything to do with that. As a matter of fact, our community sort of idolizes very sort of strong, mature,
Yeah.
muscly men. And so,
Well, I always also say too, like, Hunter, not to cut you off, but it's so interesting to me that the vitriol and the hate goes towards a community that's entire ethos is love, acceptance, do no harm, but take no shit. Like, be comfortable in your own skin, be free, have fun, community. Like, it is ultimate. It's ultimate project. Listen to me losing my voice after this week, but going through puberty again. It's ultimate projection. It's almost like what happens when it's only what I can imagine people like that feel when they stare into pure light. It's almost too bright that they can't handle it. That's honestly how I feel. I'm like, it's so funny to me to be so angry and so violent and so malicious and so full of bigotry, and to do it towards a group that is campaigning for the very opposite, and towards a group that even despite how much you hate them, they love you for who you are still.
Yeah.
Despite what you just said to their face or what you're trying to do to them or accuse of them.
And the bigger picture is it's not about accusing groups of people. It's specific criminals, specific, all of that.
Yeah.
Focus on those people. Don't demonize an entire group of people.
Yeah, don't generalize. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, this got really heavy. But
no, it did. No, I know, but I love it.
And the other thing is this, which is so annoying to me, and this is where I always say the math doesn't math. There's such a conversation about, kids should not be exposed to homosexuality because it's a sexuality. They're exposed to heterosexuality, which is a sexuality. They complain every single cartoon I ever watched as a child was about straight people.
Yeah.
It was always about the prince and the princess. Every cartoon was about Mickey and Minnie. They were all in their relationships. This is heterosexuality. The privilege that my community is not given is to be a person outside of their sexuality. But of course, heterosexual people are given that privilege.
Yeah, they are.
They can just be people, and then the sexuality part is for when you guys want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But for us, all we are is a sexuality in the current media landscape, at least. But and so again, the math doesn't math. We have a whole uproar over one cartoon, even just mentioning that they have a crush on the same sex, and it's like,
oh my God. Yeah.
Oh no, the kids won't understand.
Oh no.
My niece and nephews understand.
They completely understand. It's actually you're the one who doesn't understand. And if you think that the worst consequence or the worst thing a person can be or the worst outcome for your child is that they want to date within their same sex, you're out of touch. I think the worst outcome is they grow up to be a criminal or they grow up to murder somebody. It's this man. It was so heartbreaking, and it was honestly one of the first times I like wanted to cry on stage. It was crazy. Wow. And I'm straight, but obviously like gay men have, I joke about it, but it's so true. My life has been defined by gay men coming out to me, straight men coming in. I always say it's, but it's like, it's a revolving door. It's a revolving door. And thank you. It's just first in, first out. And but I feel this connection to specifically gay men because of like it at an early age with some of my earlier friends who I'm still friends with to this day in high school. Like I knew what an honor and privilege it was for them to confide in me and feel safe enough with me to tell me and come out to me. It was like maybe their sister first, me second. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know how heavy and profound this is. And I love that I get to receive this and be there for this person. Yeah. So it made me want to cry. And I'm a straight white female. And I wanted to cry when this was happening. And I was like, oh my God, this man. And honestly, truly it's projection. It has to be some level of projection.
100%. I am not going around accusing people of
anything. I'm like,
why are you? Yeah. A lot of people struggle with their sexuality and the
100%.
way that because sexuality falls on. I like to use the Kinsey scale if people aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
But Alfred Kinsey, #1 sex researcher and essentially most famous one in history.
Yeah.
Found that human sexuality falls on a scale between 0 and 6. And he found that most people, not to say, the majority, most people are not 0 nor 6. So 6 would be 100%
gray area.
Gay, right.
Crazy.
0 would be 100% straight. Now, there are people who fall at 0.
Sure.
And there are people who fall at 6, 100%.
Yeah.
But most people don't. That's not to say most people fall at 3.
Gay or straight or whatever. Right.
Maybe 1 or maybe 5. But the majority of people are somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes because the messaging is so negative about being LGBTQ, that when someone feels that they have even just a tad, even just a little thought every once in a while, like, ooh, he looks good.
Yeah.
Or she looks good.
Yeah.
People are so afraid of that, rightfully so, because the messaging is terrible often.
Something's wrong with you.
And so they fight it instead of accepting it. They fight it and they blame people who are out. People who are out, and it's another thing that's really interesting about the stereotypes that LGBTQ people deal with is that another one is that we're weak and we're sissy or whatever.
I just had that thought.
And again, another projection.
Yep.
Because the people who I know who are the bravest are whether you're non-binary or not, or just gay. If a man walks in the streets with feminine clothing on, with a dress on,
that's a strong.
That is
Yes,
in society, the amount of bravery that you have to have, the ridicule that you are being put up against is so enormous. And the people who criticize people like that and call them weak, ultimate projection, because that person would never. I have walked down, try being, even in this year, I have walked down the streets of Boston, which is a really accepting city, with my boyfriend holding hands. And I've had people driving by lower their window and scream the F word at both of us. And the terror, because you don't know what's coming. Are they going to throw something at us? And it's moments like that where you realize how much you have to accept, the risk that you have to accept. And even if it's not physical violence, it could also just be people looking at you, which is uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
It's just uncomfortable.
There's a lovely, incredible trans couple in St. Pete that comes to all my shows, and they're so incredible, and they do work in the advocacy space, and they had actually opened my eyes to something. So one of my good comedian friends, who's a very good dude, straight dude, very good dude, I think a great comic, and he's opened for me a few times as well, and he has a very funny joke about being drunk on stage, and it was like, which of the Kardashians would you have sex with? And that he was drunk, and he said, Caitlyn Jenner, because her pussy's brand new, essentially, is what. And it's a funny joke. And the rest of Danny's act is, he's been on the pod, the rest of Danny's act is hilarious and not problematic. It's very funny and personal stuff. And he sets that joke up as like, I have a drinking problem. I was so drunk on stage. I thought this was hilarious to say. And and this is why I love conversations like this, is like they had brought to me, they said, it's not even that we hate that joke. It's that joke opens up a level of unwanted attention. It usually does. Whenever anybody who does not identify as trans tells a joke about the trans community, it's not even as much the joke and what's said in the joke. It's that they can feel the room will find them.
Yep.
They can feel, they're like, oh, everyone's looking at us now.
Yeah.
They know, they can tell. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, I didn't think about that. And they're like, no, and we met Danny after. He's wonderful. We heard him on your podcast. We get it. We see it's a joke. But I said, no, but even just the looks, just the, but it's, something you said earlier about how the things that they accuse your community of doing, and you're like, we don't even think about that. We're not even doing that. We're not. Somebody had told that.
It's like psychobabble. Like you just sit there and you're like, what are we now?
What are you talking about? What am I now? What am I doing now?
This year, am I? Am I a terrorist
now?
I'm
turning kids gay. That's right. I'm brainwashing people. Well, it's interesting because I had a woman in Miami Lakes, who I had a friendship with, and she was a venue owner, and I love her. Otherwise, I could tell where her maybe like political beliefs or certain beliefs were. But, we have to learn in 2024 to kind of, there's gray area with everyone. And I get off stage, and she, as you can tell by my shirt, it's why I am so loud and proud about this issue, because I believe so much in the access to it and the freedom and the autonomy over everyone's body. And I get off stage, and she's like, everybody knows you're so sad about those abortions. Everybody knows that you're so heartbroken. And I was like, I'm not. I actually don't think about them. I don't. I think about the advocacy around them. I worry about girls across the country that have just been raped by their uncle, that are needing this care. I worry about a woman who might be bleeding out and needs a miscarriage in a red state and can't get, that's where my head is at. And it was that talk about projection. She goes, you shouldn't, I just feel like the way you joke about it, everybody can tell you're heartbroken. Everybody can tell you carry this with you. Everybody can tell that those procedures are weighing you down. And I was like, they're not. I actually don't even think about them. had them. I stand by them. They were two of the best choices I ever made. You want to talk about zero regrets, you know? And I've moved forward, and I'm so proud of them that now I fight on the front lines and talk about it in my comedy in hopes that we can get Roe versus Wade reinstated. Like, we can get all these protections reinstated. But it's what you said, where it was like what they think gay men are thinking of doing. She immediately goes, I know you're carrying a heavy depression over those choices. And I was like, I'm not. I don't think about them. I don't. I accept them. I'm proud of them. But then immediately to me, I go, that, and I've encountered it a lot in Miami with typically, not everybody, don't cancel, but like older Hispanic women. I'm not Hispanic, but I'm Italian. And there was a resistance in telling my family. There was a hesitance in telling my family because it's attached to religion, and you're pregnant, you carry it to term, you make it work, you do what you need to do. But I have had a resistance from that type of human being, that older Hispanic woman from Miami. And I'm like, I think this is projection. I've seen them at some of my shows, not my shows where my fans are, but I've seen them go like,
and that actually
you
kind of
shouldn't
reminds
talk
me of,
about that.
I think the transgender community has done such, has given society such a gift in an unexpected way. And I think it's the reason why this topic has just been so polarizing for
So many people
is because transgender people force all of us who are not transgender to view ourselves through the lens of how much of this is me, like this t-shirt or this shirt, these jeans, the shoes versus the heels, all of this stuff. It forces us to go, is this actually me, or is this just what society has sort of subscribed or ascribed to me?
Oh no! And once we have that question, we go, "Oh God, what do I need to?"
At the core of everything, people will fight tooth and nail to protect one thing more than anything else, and that is our identity. So when someone comes at our identity, it's a very uncomfortable place, and that's for all of us.
That's for everybody.
You, everything.
That's for everybody.
And so that for me is what has been so interesting, is that I have, with my transgender friends, all that I think, and especially when I'm like really in full conversation and it's testing what, for me, it means to be male. And I go, wow, do I really like that thing? Or am I just supposed to like that thing? And then why wouldn't I wear this article of clothing versus that article of clothing? Blue has nothing to do with
blue.
Men.
With men.
Red has nothing to do with women. We have just decided that that's what it is. And so these people challenge all of those things that we don't think about.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so fascinating.
It is. And I think it also it also comes from, I think it's how you were raised. I think it's generational. I think it's timing. I think it's culture. And I think it's directly tied to, were you given the freedom and were you given the space to explore things, I think also to outside of survival mode. Because sometimes when I think of Boomer and Gen X, and those are generations that are so focused on productivity and money and structure and whatever.
And exactly.
In the best case scenario, like sometimes I think of my parents, for instance, who are incredibly open-minded and for their generation are incredibly open-minded. And trust me, I have gone back and forth with my mom and turned her opinions around fully on abortion. Like fully. Like was devastated when her daughter came to her a first time and said, Mom, and her world was crashed around her. But now she's the loudest advocate for it, and it's incredible. But I think of my parents and their relationship with, let's say pronouns, right? Like they don't want to ever make anybody feel unsafe or unseen or not accepted. But they grew up in a generation. Do I think that they're going to immediately adopt using them in conversation? I don't know. I think they're trying. I think they forget to try sometimes. I think it confuses them a little bit. Yeah. And I think it's only because they grew up in a generation, and to some extent, they're still in this level of survival mode. My parents now at 70, they weren't given time to think about these things. So now that it's like, oh, we pulled back this new layer where blue might not mean man and red might not mean woman, and what does that shirt mean? And you can dress this way and you can look this way. I think that some people, the best people with the best intentions from that generation are like, I don't think I have time, because they weren't raised with the freedom and the time and the space to even have those questions. They were just, I'm a man, obviously. Do you know what I mean? I think
we all have our roles.
In a silver line, like I explain it, and I have these conversations with my parents, and they're trying, and it's the most cute and endearing and positive thing to see them like genuinely try. Because I almost feel like now that they're retired, and I help them a lot, and their daughter is a comedian, and they know what I stand for and who I am, and they come to shows and they see so much that they wouldn't have seen. I think now for the first time in their life that they're retired, they can breathe easy, and they have the luxury of talking about transgender people and talking about sexuality. Does that make any sense? You know what I mean?
100%.
Because they can finally exhale for the first time in their life.
Like, we have to drop the temperature a little bit. It is a little confusing for a lot of people.
It is.
And to be honest, I think that's what's almost the bigger problem is them feeling like they're not allowed to be confused. Yes, of course it's confusing. A lot of people have been raised in a way that just never allowed, like you said, for
we know people who don't know regular pronouns.
People need a beat. People need a beat. But the parallel that I like to draw is that, because I've actually gone through this many times in my life, where girlfriends that I've had my whole life get married, and all of a sudden their last name is different. And it takes me a minute. Yeah. And I'm just thinking of, for some reason, I always think of my co-anchor in high school on the morning announcements, Christina Suarez, who is no longer Suarez, Christina Vite. Love her.
And you still probably call her Christina Suarez.
It's hard. It takes you a minute to get there, but society accepts that identity change. So it's not that we can't accept the identity change, because it is a bit of an identity change. Yeah. It's that I think people just feel like they're not supposed to, and therefore they don't want to. But I like to draw that parallel to women getting married and how that is essentially kind of like a pronoun, not a pronoun, but
no, I'm with you.
But it's the same math. And again, it takes a beat, but we've all accepted that, right?
Well, I mean, let's talk about that, because as a woman who's expected to, well, I get asked all the time, if and when you were ever to get married, are you keeping your name? Are you keeping it for professional reasons and your public persona? Are you hyphenating? Are you doing both? Are you leaving? Are you and that you're 100, there's an entire conversation, and there's also like a stigma and an assumption and an association with that. Like when you have a successful career that happens to also be in the public eye, everybody immediately is like, you're not taking his name, right? Obviously. And I'm like, actually, I would probably keep my last name for professional reasons and for my public persona, but I can be pretty traditional in the marriage sense. I do want to be married. I like monogamy. And when I fall in love with that person, I do want to take his last name for at least the intents of our bill sharing, our kids, and people usually find that shocking when they learn that about me. They're like, oh, we thought he would be taking your last name. And I'm like, maybe, you know what I mean? But
you're like, I'm a traditional girl.
I'm a traditional girl. Like, so it's, but there's, and then the negative stigma to that too is like, almost like, should you take your husband's last name? Did you choose to lose yourself as a woman? I've heard conversations about that.
Life is messy. People can fall on one side or the other. There's no right answer, like a lot of the time, and we just have to figure out what works for us. And I always like to remind people that sex and gender are two different words for a reason. They're not the same thing. When you're born a certain sex, like for example, it's not a gender reveal party, it's a sex reveal party. Gender is an identity. Sex is a physical
biological
reality. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I like to say blue is gender, but you know what is sex.
Yeah.
So blue is gender. Blue is, okay, I identify with this sort of way of living, this aesthetic, this look, and this role within society. And I know a lot of people, it's so funny because when I was young, I had many friends, even before I knew that I was gay, but we're all kind of drawn to each other.
Yeah.
I had many friends who were very queer. And I didn't realize yet because they weren't, gay wasn't the right word.
Yeah.
Certainly straight wasn't the right word. It was something else. And we always recognized that they were kind of unique, special, different. And the older I get, the more I realize these people were challenging gender norms and gender roles so naturally as kids. And I'm telling you, starting in middle school, they just didn't follow the same way that I was, the same way that other people were. And in hindsight, I go, I have known queer people, non-binary people. People think this is absolutely new. Transgender people have been around as long as what's the word for it?
No, yeah.
Everybody else.
Yeah.
From the dawn of time, because again, gender, you have the two-spirit community within, Native people. Gender is not the same thing as sex. It is just a different role that people feel comfortable with, that works for them and is their truth.
Yeah.
And
as I always say, said it many times on this podcast, in regards to conversations like this, I always say, I go, when in doubt, for anybody who's up in arms about how someone dresses or looks or identifies, or if they've had an abortion or not, or if they're getting married or the marriage is open or it's closed or it's whatever, I say, when in doubt, lovingly, mind your business. I always say, I go, just like, let everybody, believe it or not, like you're sandwiched in between two homes, you have neighbors, there's people around you who have had an abortion and it's okay. Like I had just seen something online that was like, the reality is someone you love has had an abortion. The reality is someone and I share it proudly. I've lost followers and I don't care. I don't care. Authenticity is the most important thing to me as a human being and as an artist. And, I proudly shared that. And I said, I go, yeah, someone you love has had an abortion. And if you love me, wrap your head around the fact that those two things are true.
Right.
And there's duality to it. But thank you so much. This is
Brittany, this was so fun.
I wanted to cry 5 times during this podcast.
This was exhausting in an emotional and intellectual way, which is so amazing. Because what is it that you and I love to go full exhaustion, and then you and I will be alone in our homes for several hours in the dark.
That's what it's
to recover.
High functioning. I saw Amy Poehler, and I think it was SZA interviewing each other, and I forget the exact term, but it's just called high functioning. And she goes, yeah, like when you're at work, you're high functioning, very good at what you do, super all in, super dialed in. And then the second the duties end, you're like, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm currently working on having those two modes of my body for the sake of my nervous system just not be so extreme.
Yeah.
To circle it back to what we talked about at the top of the episode. Can I still show up and be really good at my job, but maybe not exert so much? And just be like, hey, I can still be really funny today, but this is where my energy level is at, and here's where my emotional availability is. So then maybe when I get off stage or my work is done, the come down isn't so drastic and exhausting and draining. I'm trying to, I don't know.
Every inch closer to full authenticity, I think, brings those two extremes to a different center that we haven't quite experienced yet.
And as a Libra man, I love that you championed the gray area first in talking about sexuality. And that's
life is so gray, and sexuality
and it's so beautiful when it's gray. It's so beautiful.
But also for some people are 0, some people are 6, and it's not so great for them, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
It makes it less confusing.
It makes it way less confusing, but I always encourage people to not be so afraid of the gray area, because I'm like, along with that confusion is also a lot of other possibilities that you may have never considered.
Yeah.
And might just be the answer waiting for you. And also to not change the things about because I even just read something the other day that was like, changing ourselves prevents us from finding the people who are looking for exactly what we are.
Yes.
Because there's always someone who's looking for exactly what you are.
And I'm trying to get there. Give me 2 years, and I think I'll be ready to finally meet somebody. For real.
Yeah.
Because
are you single right now?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. But you said that you're ready, you've had that career fulfillment on some level, unlock that, so that now you're ready for
the
which again
stuff. Yes.
Again, like how you said, there's different times or different priorities in your life. That's why whenever it's like, do you want kids or career or what? I go, I want both.
Yeah.
But right now, this is what is.
But I love being single. I don't want to say like I'm
Yeah,
not,
great.
It's
I do too,
the
by the way.
journey.
I do
My
too.
relationship with myself has been the most compelling relationship
Yeah.
I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like my process with getting to know myself and getting happier and figuring all of this out
Yeah.
has trumped any relationship I had in the past. And before, I used to think that I'm thinking of one specific relationship was like the most meaningful time of my life, and that's been overtaken by the one with little old me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
So-
greatest relationship, and it's the longest relationship you'll ever have.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do need to be really single, which is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And truly, like, not seeing anyone, not talking to anyone, not sleeping with anyone currently, like, just very, very single. And I've been in this mode for quite some time. But it's not lonely. It's not sad. If anything, it's like I'm monogamous with myself.
Right.
And it's in a
Yeah.
good way. I feel like I truly am learning a lot about myself, and that now, should anybody come in, it really is additive
It
at
has
this
to
point.
be.
It's really supplemental.
Right.
And it's like, oh God, this is so great. And we're running parallel to each other. And this is like this new fun, good thing that's worth making time for in my schedule
Right.
too.
Because
Yeah.
how can you share your space otherwise? I've gotten
Yeah,
to the point is
literally.
like me and my cat, I'm like,
I have a cat too.
I'm like, there's really very little room for somebody else. So unless it's really gonna add, then let's just be friends.
I have a cat too. Of course you have a cat. Okay, I love you.
Why are we the
I
same
love-
person?
We're the
Also,
same.
Your couches are gray.
Aren't they
Where you
great?
talk about the grays of life on the podcast. So, is that by design? I should have been laying like
no,
this the
it's
whole
not,
time.
but maybe it's subconscious. Because we have a gray rug, gray accessories, gray couch. We should just call this the gray area.
The gray area.
The gray area.
The Gray Area podcast.
By Brittany Brave.
Love you.
I love you more. Yay! That was so amazing.